Carton at the bottom of the hour. I want to get to the position room before we get Craig on. We're going to do wide receiver. And then we'll give you a closing synopsis on it. So let's take a look at the group heading into camp in 16 days. A.J. Brown, we'll start there. Immediate impact. Amazing first year. His rapport with Hurts. You know, sometimes you have to wait and see how a quarterback, wide receiver tandem pick up with one another. It was instantaneous. Their rapport was amazing right off the top. I mean, they connected, and pretty much it was a stable connection the entire season. It was really well done. He's the best wide receiver that the Eagles have had since Terrell Owens. And you could even actually probably go back to that Owens season. Owens probably by a tick may have had a better season because he got hurt at the end of that year. I missed a couple games at the end of the season, I think 2. But I would say this to you, that A.J. Brown probably had one of the most productive seasons in the history of the franchise, and that will go down as one of the greatest seasons. And he'll go down as one of the greatest acquisitions in franchise history and maybe one of the greatest trades that Howie's ever made. He's also special in the run game, and I think he learned that. And you know what? What's even more effective with him is that I think his years in Tennessee having to block for Derrick Henry really translated over to a run team like Philly. The only question and the only issue I have is when the play's not coming play side to him. He'll tend to take the play off. And, you know, I'd like to see him improve by being an every down guy because he's as much a decoy as he is a weapon. You have to account for him. So when he takes that play off as a defender, you're going to see just his mannerism. Okay? Really a great player, though. Devonta Smith. Every time he steps on the field, he's becoming a bigger star. Every week, it just seems that get this. Devonta Smith could go with a goose egg in catches, but his professionalism rises with many people in the locker room and how he conducts himself. And that translates into his preparation, dedication, and the perspiration that he puts into his dedication on how he prepares for each and every single game. He is constantly becoming a better professional every game. He's not going to be gauged on catches. He's going to be gauged on impactful catches and how he conducts himself, how he handles himself. He is a technician. He's a technician when it comes to his route running. He is absolutely a great pro. When you watch him line up, there's no bitching, there's no moaning. He's constantly improving himself as a professional NFL player. And he's not defined by catches. He's defined by wins and results. And you can see it in him. He's got a mentality about him that is like uncommon in the wide receiver game today that you don't see in a lot of places. Let me say this to you. Justin Jefferson or Jamar Chase or any of these other guys have a goose egg in catches. You're going to hear complaints come Monday. You're not going to hear any of that from him as long as they're winning. Okay? If they're winning, there's no complaints because he's a result of winning. And I believe that's what makes him really an absolute great pro. When he doesn't, he be turned into a better pro after the Detroit game. No catches. Very common. Very uncommon. You don't hear that said about wideouts coming off a game where they don't have a catch. You have changed your tune in Devonta since last year. Chris, absolutely. I didn't think he could handle the pounding. He gets hit. He's a pro. He's a technician. He has absolutely fit in and absolutely has played himself into being arguably one of the top 3 pros on that team. Absolutely. Kudos. That's living up to your draft. And actually, he's underdrafted. If you want to put it in perspective now, He went from being overdrafted, I thought, to being underdrafted. Okay? This guy's an elite dude, man, and an elite player. Very rarely do you have that combination. Quez Watkins. Great camp. I'm not sure what that means. There's going to be a spot on the 2023 team for him. Now, what are the expectations for him? What are the expectations for him? I don't think it's anything in catches. Okay? I don't remember you ever saying he was overdrafted, just that he wasn't the right pick for Philly. Yeah. That's what I said, Tone, but I thought that was a high draft pick for a guy that I thought coming out of Alabama that was 6'1", 179. I didn't think 179 could play in the NFL. I thought he was a little too small. Okay? I didn't know if he would be able to handle the amount of pounding, and he has. He got hit pretty good last year. And this guy's like a Gumby doll. He just gets up and he plays, man. He's a freaking great star. Now, for Quez is an anomaly here because you don't know how to handle this. He's your number 3 guy, right? He's a decoy. But the only way the decoy works is if the decoy makes catches. Okay? It's like a duck decoy that the Ducks don't believe in right now because you know why? After a while, they know it's plastic. And they know it's nothing. Quez has to make impactful moves on the field to keep that decoy status. The only reason he's on the Eagles, he's got fair hands and he's got exceptional speed. You've got to make, hey, if you're targeted 7 times, that's probably too much for him. Say you're targeted 4 times in a game. You've got to make those catches for you to be considered a decoy. Okay? And for people to believe it. I do believe the Eagles want this guy on the team. I do. I believe they want him on the team. But at the end of the day, the decoy's got to matter. The kid from Atlanta, excuse me if I'm not saying his name right, Olamide Zacchaeus, he was the number 3 wideout in Atlanta. 40 catches, 533. That's not bad for number 3. Okay? That's not bad for a number 3. 40 catches. I'd like Quez to have that number. 40 catches, 533 yards. Now, look, it's Atlanta. I get it. And by the way, if you go back to his years when he first got into the league in 2019, every year he's improved his catch total. So he's gotten better. I think there's going to be a little battle here between this kid and Quez for that number 3 spot. That's a good thing. And get this. I'd like to see this guy in action. I'd like to see that. I think it's an upgrade from Zach Pascal. Okay? He went to St. Joe's also. Okay? And if you look at his catch totals, since 2019, he's gotten better. The kid Convey, the punt returner, here's my only recommendation to him. Dude, duck. I mean, duck. We're going to talk about special teams here in a minute. Just duck. This guy's a pinball machine back there. Devin Allen. Hey, I'm going to say this to you about Devin Allen. Devin Allen says he's the fastest guy in the NFL. I don't believe that that's going to earn him a roster spot on the 53-man roster. It may put him back on the practice squad, but I don't think that that puts him on the 53-man. You may be the fastest guy on the planet, but they haven't figured out a way to utilize you yet, which means if you're not in the conversation to try to push these other guys for that number 3 spot, then you're really not in the conversation. So, I mean, these last 2 guys are kind of dudes. So here's what I would say. The depth is better. Actually, I'm glad we're doing these position rooms because I'm actually seeing a little bit more depth than I thought on the team. Now that you really go into who these guys are, there's a little more. Hey, I'll say this to you guys. There's a little more depth on the Eagles on both sides of the ball than I thought. And you guys may have been right a little bit. Sills, they may not have the experience, but there is depth on both sides of the ball. You may be right. Okay? You may be right. So here's the overall look at the wide receiver position. I would say this to you. 2 superstars. One in the making. Then after that, you go down to Quez, the kid from Atlanta, and then dudes. Is it a deep group? Here's my problem with your wide receiving core. None of these guys are real impactful players on your special teams. Why? I mean, why isn't Quez returning kicks? He's a 4-3 guy. Why don't they have him back there? Are they concerned about the depth at wide receiver if AJ or Devonta go down? They're protecting Jalen and they're going to sacrifice special teams? Probably. Okay? Probably. Because it's not the deepest group of dudes. Because when you come away from Devonta and AJ, you now have a fall off, a pretty substantial fall off. 2 good players, 2 fair players. So like Devonta, if Devonta goes down, AJ single covered, you're pushing Quez up, that's not going to help Jalen. Now, the 2 things that you have this year that you didn't have, you're probably going to have a full season of Dallas Goedert. And you're going to have an opportunity to use Swift in the passing game. You didn't have that last year. For whatever reason, they didn't implement Miles Sanders. What's funny about how Sanders was used in his time in Philly? The first year in Philly, he was used as a pass catcher. And then after that, it dwindled every single year until he left for Carolina. They just kept getting away from it. Now, maybe that's because of the style of play of the quarterback, that you get away from that a little bit. Okay? So I get it because RPO is not real. See, the one thing you got to remember something about RPO. RPO is not big in screen games. So, and I hear people, and I think I heard Rob talking about what's the screen game going to look like? Well, you don't have a screen game in RPO offense. That's not going to be part of it. Because remember, in RPO, you're running first. I mean, the running back may be able to get out, but Jalen is not looking on the screen to the right. He's looking at either the free safety or the strong side linebacker on whether to keep it or run it or drop back and pass. To look over to your right and determine whether you're going to go into the short dump-off game, you're asking another component being added into it. I'll tell you what, if you start implementing more of now look, maybe if you go to a shotgun and you have a screen that's built into the play call, that's a way to do it. And you can have a designed play for that. But to sit there and say that that's going to be a major component in how they throw the ball this year, I'm not sure that's going to be true. In his second season, Sanders was dropping so many passes, Doug P. stopped going to him in the pass game altogether, and it carried over to Sirianni's regime. That was a Howie decision. Howie probably told him, you're going to be more effective running him in between the tackles than flanking him out and having him catch screen passes. Plus, the one thing that I would have gotten away from and why he dropped. Can I tell you why he dropped a lot of passes? Because at the end of the day, Miles Sanders runs to contact. He doesn't run to space. And when you're constantly thinking of running to contact, you're thinking about catching the ball first. And when you don't catch the ball, the guy's on top of you, your really concentration level's not there. He's not a natural pass catcher. And that's why they got away from him. I went back and watched him. He runs to contact. He's a contact runner. Swift is more of an elusive guy in traffic. Sanders is not the greatest guy in traffic. Okay? And he goes down. So, I mean, a guy like Swift is a constant guy that's moving. He has a feel for it inside of traffic. Dude, when you're a great running back like that, you have a feel for interior traffic, and you don't run to it. Like Barry Sanders. Sanders had a feel for the game. This guy had eyes in the back of his head. He could feel pressure. He knew where it was coming from. Plus, he was a student of what defenses were trying to do to him by keeping him in the box. He knew exactly what they were trying to accomplish by keeping him contained. If you ever noticed the way Sanders ran the ball, Sanders loved going wide, didn't he? Because once he was in open space, there is not a corner on the planet or free or strong safety that's running him down, or linebacker. And in space, Sanders may be the greatest open field runner since Sayers. Okay? You could probably put those two guys in a conversation in open space. Those guys know how to evade. You know, Miles Sanders is a guy that ran to contact. And that's why, you know, and by the way, probably also one of the reasons why they lost a lot of faith in him in the Super Bowl too, when he put the ball on the carpet twice. He had a yipster in the Super Bowl, and that's why they moved off him. Yeah, but man, I'll tell you something, Yale. Moving off of a guy in a Super Bowl game that had 1,300 yards, I'm going to die with the guys that got me there. I'm not just going to start doing things and going to lesser players. That's not the game I'm doing that in. Going away from a guy who had 1,300 yards, who dropped the ball twice, that's not a remedy. That guy helped get you there. You die on the vine with your guys. You don't sit there and go and become conservative in your play calling and go away from a guy. I think that hurt them in the fourth quarter. You can't just go away. Well, the guy put the ball on the carpet twice. So what? That'd be like telling Allen Iverson not to keep shooting because he's 0 for 8. Not doing that. Absolutely not doing that. And Neil, and then what you do is they'll throw him the ball, run him, keep him running. The 3 and outs that they had in the fourth, even if it was 2 or 1, was the difference in the ball game. That was the difference in the game there. Remember something. Now with the Eagles, you have this scenario set up. You have the most inexperienced coordinators in the NFL going into this year with maybe the best roster in the NFC next to San Francisco. You got training wheels, D coordinators, and offensive coordinators. Just saying. You know, when you play Andy Reid and you play Patrick Mahomes at Arrowhead this year, or you open even the season in New England with Belichick, with coordinators that have never been in the moment. Okay, I want to see how that plays out. I want to see how that plays out here. All right.